So what happens when a journalist gets beaten up, milkshaked with quick-drying cement, and given a brain hemorrhage at an Antifa gathering? Well, clearly we have an online debate of whether he deserved it or not because he is a contributor and editor for Quillette after all, which isn't even a conservative publication, but try explaining that to a bunch of anarchist toddlers with bloodlust. Centrist liberals are the new Nazis. Spread the word. I'm centrist conservative, so if Andy Ngo is a Nazi, I must be Darth Vader. Watch your arms around me, I'll cut that shit off and tell you I'm your daddy. Andy wasn't even the only person injured at the event. 8 people had injuries, including 3 police officers who apparently were there, though perhaps only physically. Cops at Antifa protests are known for doing as absolutely little as possible under orders from Portland's mayor, Ted Wheeler, who is the weakest sack of shit I've ever heard of holding a mayoral office. Quick-drying cement in this milkshake form can leave chemical burns when they impact skin. It's effectively a chemical attack, and while his citizens are becoming the victims of chemical attacks, this fucking mayor orders the police to stand down at every possible turn. It took him 2 days after the incident to send out a tweet thread, starting with, "Portland has always been a beacon of free speech. We are proud of that history." That's your opener? Pride in your city is not a super cool way to address someone getting brutalized in your city. You hear about a gay Asian man getting a brain bleed from thugs and your first response is like, ain't our city great? And before I go on, let me address something. Andy Ngo is a gay Asian dude who got beat up at the bleached ass end of Pride Month, and yet, because he expresses opposing ideological viewpoints, the far left celebrates it. They care about progressivism only when it's convenient. Make no mistake about that shit. Not only that, but of all the Democratic nominees for president, now 3 days after this attack, only one has said a damn thing about it, and that's Andrew Yang. Hashtag Yang Gang. Hashtag Let Yang Speak. And even his statement was weak in my estimation. He tweeted, "I hope Andy's okay. Journalists should be safe to report on a protest without being targeted." And then a bunch of people filled his replies by saying Andy isn't a journalist, despite being a journalist. As if being a journalist is what disqualifies you from deserving public beatings regardless. Yang acknowledged it in the vaguest possible terms and condemned it with the least amount of force possible. Didn't even mention Antifa, and what candidate would? They're all vying for the vote of the wackiest loons in the Democratic Party, refusing to alienate even the stupidest and most violent subsection of their population. They all raised their hands at the debate to give free healthcare to illegal immigrants, which isn't even the majority stance of the full Democratic Party. I bet half of them didn't even mean that shit. Quick update since yesterday, another Dem candidate tweeted support for Andy and a condemnation of his attackers. Dude, is Antifa fucking Voldemort? Why will nobody name these bitches? But props to Eric Swalwell, the last person I'd have thought would do something like that, given that everything else about his political views is contemptible. But hey, when you're polling at 0%, you got nothing to lose, am I right? He also added that he'd want Congress to pass his Journalist Protection Act, which would make it a federal crime to assault or batter a journalist. But frankly, it's already a regular crime to do that. The problem is that it's being done by people in masks who are tough to identify because they're allowed to wear masks in the first place. But back to the mayor of Portland's tweets. After humble bragging about his city in the wake of a violent assault, he went on to tweet, "But in the last couple of years, some have increasingly used their opportunity to exercise their First Amendment rights as an opportunity to incite violence." At this point, we don't even know which side he's talking about. This thread can read like a glowing support of Antifa if he was going to play the whole speech that doesn't incite violence can still incite violence angle against Andy and try to blame him for it. And in fact, the whole thread is pretty ambiguous, and I believe that's on purpose. Again, no mention of Antifa, just vague soliloquies about how violence is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Right, you're so intolerant of violence that you won't even call out the perpetrating organization by name. You must be at your wits fucking end, bro. I can feel that last straw breaking your back all the way over here. Also, he specifically says, in the last couple of years, while describing the timeline of Antifa violence, which by its own admission is a confession of absolute failure on the part of himself. You've allowed this shit to stir for years. It's been a known problem for years. This tweet thread means nothing until you let the police do their damn job. I followed Andy on Twitter for a few months. This was a premeditated attack. 2 days beforehand, he tweeted pictures of Antifa members posting about what they should do if they saw him at the event, and the suggestions were not friendly. He's well known by them, and has documented many of their gatherings, having been previously sprayed with silly string and pepper spray, and his camera being damaged or stolen several times. It's very interesting to see the hypocritical mental exercises that celebrators of his injuries go through as they defend what happened given to him. And by interesting, I mean infuriating. I thought victim blaming was supposed to have gone out of style. You're telling me he was asking for it? Is a drunk girl at a party asking to be raped? Is a person walking the streets of Chicago asking to be murdered? You would answer no to both these questions because in every other piece of this logic puzzle, you exclusively blame the perpetrator of the incident, but as soon as it becomes inconvenient to do so, you'll flip just as fucking easily because you have no real principles other than complete political domination? That's nice to know. Soldiers fighting wars aren't asking to be shot. They're asking God every day not to be. They're doing their duty. When journalists head into dangerous places to document what's happening for the rest of us who are too afraid or unwilling to find out ourselves, at what point do you think it's appropriate to scorn and belittle them as they get hurt? They knew the risks. They sure did, and they went anyway, which is a brave thing to do for the greater good in my estimation. But before you disassociate the risks with the human causes of those risks, ask yourself why there needed to be risks at all. The journalist is taking the risk. Who's giving it? And why? I swear people's logic could do as little as put on a hat, and they'd immediately start failing to recognize it. It's hard to be consistent when you have acute logical dementia. It just goes to show how diluted the far left has gotten. They've stripped anyone to the right of them of their very humanity in their eyes just so they can cheer and feel nothing but joy when those people are assaulted and hospitalized. They've self-demonized themselves by demonizing everybody else. Some of the shit I've seen on Twitter in the wake of Antifa's cement milkshaking spree has been straight up monstrous. This week, Andy started making the news show rounds, appearing on Fox News and CNN to share his story, and the damage done to his brain is noticeable. People who know him say he doesn't usually talk like that. It's sad. Hopefully he'll make a full recovery, but it might be slow. So people still trying to call this staged or compare him to Jussie Smollett are at best woefully under the influence of fake news, and at worst willfully and purposefully spreading fake news. If I was gonna stage an attack and I ended up suffering a brain bleed, I'd be like, thanks guys, you really went above and beyond the Call of Duty there. I'm gonna go lie down for 3 months. Hashtag worth it. Important to note that forged headlines are going around the internet claiming to be written by people whose work has been altered to make it seem like the story is fake, when in fact they wrote it very differently. Fake news is real and getting worse, and deepfakes are only going to get more advanced and ruin basically everything. The future looks grim for authenticity. This story isn't over though. I really hope we get some meaningful developments as far as arrests and actions taken to ensure that we stop fostering environments where this can happen again. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino. And I'll see you guys next time.